Okay, if the room can come to order, please. Welcome to Committee of the Whole meeting, Cleveland Heights Committee of the Whole meeting. It's May 4th at 6:01 p.m.
Cobb.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
Posh.
Here.
Whitboy.
Here.
Cohen.
Here.
Kuda.
Here.
Stone. Here.
All right, the first thing we're gonna do is go into executive session. So anybody here, we'll make sure we come back and get you if you're sitting in the hallway. Vice President Larson?
Yes. I would like to ask a favor from our planning and development staff. All of you are here that need to listen to this. I would like you to consider the next time that a private developer comes in, purchases a vacant lot that's been vacant for a long time in a business district, that council gets to have information about that. It could be an executive session if you're concerned about negotiating and the conditions and those kinds of things. But I would really like consideration for council the next time that this happens. So I just want to plant that seed. I don't expect a response right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President. Want to go and read it?
I'd like to make a motion that we go into executive session to A, to discuss with an attorney for the public body claims or disputes involving the public body that are the subject of pending court action or in the judgment of such attorney appear likely to be the subject of a future court action or claim. And B, to consider the terms of sale or lease of city-owned real or personal property.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion about going into executive session? All right, Andy, go ahead.
Cobb.
Aye.
Larson.
Here. Aye.
Posh.
Yes.
Whitboy. Cohen. Aye. Kuda.
Aye.
Stone. Yeah, aye.
Okay, we're back from executive session. We're gonna go on to legislative review. We're gonna start with resolution 94-2026. Resolution appointing Lauren Smith and Nikki Newman as members of Park and Rec. Councilman Cobb?
We discussed both of these individuals in administrative services at the last Administrative Services Committee meeting. There was a consensus that these were two people that we would like to appoint, and previously we had discussed all of the applicants in an executive session in a prior committee of the whole.
All right, if there are no questions, we'll go on to 97-2026, an ordinance to make appropriation for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Cleveland Heights during the year ending December 31st, 2026. And let's see, on the purpose statement, this is to authorize the mayor to approve a contract with NOACA for design and installation. I would ask again, I'm on 97. I'm just following.
Yeah, but where are you looking at a memo?
Oh,
That's the wrong memo.
okay. Well, then unfortunately, was this added?
Yes.
Yes.
See, if I don't get that, then,
Yes.
all right. My bad, sorry about that.
This one is the
Park Center.
Yeah.
All right,
Everyone should have received all those documents earlier today.
yes. Would the law director like to just kind of catch us up on how this appropriation came about and so forth? Or the finance director? Oh.
Oh, there you go.
Perfect. So Addie, was the memo included in
Yes.
the? Okay. Let me try to find that.
Unfortunately.
So essentially this results from the city's authorization of an economic development grant last year in the amount of $750,000 to support the Ark Synagogue redevelopment project. as a part of that grant legislation, there was a separate authorization for the mayor to execute an executive order or sign an executive order that would provide for the waiver of $250,000 in building permit fees. And that executive order was issued on March 26th as it synced up toward the closing period for the transaction. March 26th of this year, following the approval of the legislation and the grant agreement in October of 2025. And just about the same time the executive order was signed by the mayor, the developer went to the building department and obtained the permit, but rather than the waiver, they paid the permit fees. And so there's no net difference to the city in terms of the amount of financial support the city is providing. It's just that rather than issuing a piece of paper that says your fee permit responsibility is reduced by $250,000, they paid the full amount. And therefore, under that approach, they requested that the $250,000 be refunded. And in order to do that, the finance director has explained that the appropriation is needed so that the money paid in can be returned to the developer as an accounting entry. And that's where I run into the wall of finance. So I would defer to the finance director at that point.
Very good. Any questions on this? Yeah, go ahead.
Given the size of the check that they wrote, didn't this cause anyone in the building department to question the transaction?
I don't know. I mean, it was the size that is driven by the valuation of the project. And so, it was calculated on the basis of the items that are in the receipt, including the valuation items. And so I think that it probably seemed generally in order.
They may have even just paid online via credit card or other means through a portal.
Go ahead.
The question for me comes when I look at the actual receipt that the finance director provided to us. And $250,639 of that receipt was paid for an alteration valuation fee. Does that particular fee fit into the definition of the eligible fees only on number 3 on this particular EO? It outlines.
So I would say everything on this sheet, I think you're looking at the same one.
Yes, yeah.
Is applicable outside of the state fee.
Okay.
And if you subtract that, the number is still just
Above
over
the
250,000,
yeah.
right?
So I just want to make sure he doesn't come back and ask for the same amount again.
Sure.
I am in support of this. Normally, I would say let's do a second reading, but because we need to get this money back to them, even though they perhaps made an oversight and are a bit involved in, they shouldn't have paid us this to begin with. It needs to go back to them, so I'm comfortable with sending them this money.
So, yeah, we have to do this, and it's something that we agreed to. And I know a lot of people in this room worked real hard over the last couple of days to try to make this happen. So I don't want to throw cold water on something, but I have to say, this is the kind of stuff I really wish was put in the budget last year. I know we went through this before. I know we haven't been following that practice. It would be my opinion, this is something we wouldn't be doing an appropriation for because it would already be in the budget.
Yeah, understood, but it wouldn't have been, there wouldn't have been a payment out from the city if the strict sort of approach outlined in the agreement and the EO had been followed, because there wasn't supposed
Had
to
they
be a
withheld
payment
that
to the city.
$250, we wouldn't have had an appropriation for $250 because it was gonna get washed out without running through the city's books.
Okay.
But once they did that, that's what caused the fact of what we gotta do today.
Okay.
But I mean, the point is legitimate, of course. I guess I would characterize it as the financial reality of that $250,000 not belonging to the city by the end of this year was reflected in the budget. It was just not expected to come in at all, and not expected.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
All right, and thank you, staff, for putting this together. I know it was a lot of work over the weekend. 98-2026, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Waste Management of Ohio. This is for individual members recycling, processing services consortium that includes Beechwood, Highland Heights, Independence Lake, Lyndhurst, Moreland Hills, Pepper Pike, Solon, University Heights, and Woodmere, organized by the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District. Any questions about this? Please.
Director Klingscale, the agreement only goes until September of 2026.
No, we have a current agreement that goes until September of 2026. But the agreement that the consortium is currently involved in, it has an option in 2026 that allows us to join the consortium, the current consortium. So our current agreement expires in September 2026. And then they have an option within their contract that they can exercise in September 2026.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, other questions or comments? All right, we'll move on to first readings only. 95-2026, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with NOACA for the design and installation of 8 DC fast charger electric vehicle charging points at City Hall. Again, I would ask that on the purpose statement that I like it short, that's nice, but please include the amount of money. I don't know who did this one, but yeah.
I'll take that back.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Yes.
So in the legislation, it talks about $140,000 of the NOPEC Energized Community Grant Funds that's being used to pay for our match. Does that also, are there monies there to also pay for the installation?
So that is going to be covered by the grant. We'd be receiving over $500,000 from NOACA, and the total cost to the city is just $70,000 per set of 4. We have over $300,000, I believe, sitting in our NOACA account, and we have to use at least $100,000 of it by November of this year.
NOACA or NOPEC?
NOPEC.
So we have the grant from NOPEC.
We're getting grant money from NOACA, and we're using NOPEC money as our match for the NOACA grant.
And there's no matching grant with the NOPEC grant. There's no matching contribution. Okay.
Right.
Wonderful.
So I got all that part, but my question is in the timing wise, in terms of having these installed, do we have a timeline?
We expect that it'll be next year, so they have to put it out to bid and have someone design everything. We've had a couple like internal looks at the site, and we've had some thoughts on that, but ultimately NOACA would drive the project.
And then just thinking about public, like we have I think 0 public chargers.
Apparently there's one at the Honda dealership, like behind the Honda dealership. It doesn't show up on the map
Okay.
of
Interesting.
available chargers, but because we do not already have any, that's part of the reason that we were able to get this through NOACA. They prioritized us because we do not already have any public-facing chargers.
And so what does that mean? My question is, what does that mean for the public? Like obviously we're going to be using it to charge city vehicles. Because we need
Actually,
them.
these are only for the public. These 8 are only for the public.
Okay.
So the intention is for 4 to be at the community center and 4 to be here at City Hall. We're simultaneously exploring chargers that we'd be able to use for our fleet. Because right now we have 2 cables hanging out at the back of this building, and we have to rotate cars in and out all day long to charge them. So we're separately looking at that, and we're looking at the rest of the NOPEC money potentially for that infrastructure. The good news is that a lot of the infrastructure that would be needed for that has already been installed downstairs.
That's great. So then are these chargers then going to be available for free to the public, or these charge at a particular rate?
We would have to, we would charge.
Yeah.
But it specifies that we can charge only within like certain amounts. Like we can recoup our investment, but we can't, gouge people on it.
Right. Okay. And actually I had thought, given that you had shared so much with us about the difficulty of charging our electric fleet for the city, that this was meant to help with that. So I think
technically we can use them for that purpose, but I think that they have to be available to the public, I think 16 of the 24 hours of the day. So if the infrastructure that we put in for our fleet is not adequate, we could potentially go over and use them for 8 of the 24 hours of the day. But I think our intention is to just let the public use them.
That's great. And I'm sorry, did you say the location for City Hall? Where?
Yeah, one set of 4 would be here at City Hall and one set of 4 would be at the community center.
Right, so I'm just wondering, in City Hall, like in the back of the building, the front, have you?
NOACA will
NOACA.
have to, have their designer give judgments on that.
Okay, all right, thank you. It's exciting.
All right, other questions? On to resolution 96, 2026, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement for the continuation and expansion of citywide food scrap composting through Rust Belt Riders. Go ahead.
I did ask we got an email with the report from Rust Belt Riders it's called the spring report. And I asked them if they would provide or could provide what kind of usage we're getting. I'm particularly interested in Nova Library to see if people are using it, because a couple of times I've been up there, everything's been pretty empty. So if we need to do more educational information to our neighborhoods, then that's something that I can work with Deanna on, but I just would like to know.
So here's a picture of you at the Nova Library.
With my bucket.
It was
Yes.
fun.
So I actually wanted to ask about the reporting. I did not receive a report, so I don't know if they just sent it to you or if they sent it to all, or maybe it's possible I missed it. But before we go into budget season for next year, or in budget season, it would be really important, I think, to have a report of what the usage is so we can understand how much this is per person or per however the quantity is. I mean, I'm excited about expanding the program, but if we're spending $76,000, $100,000 and we only have 100 residents participating, that's a really important input for how we're thinking about the budget for next year. So I just want to have that information on hand.
Can I ask Director Schantz a question? There you are. What do we do as far as social media and so forth to reach out to people about these programs?
So especially when they're new, they're launching, we put out a lot of messaging about signing up. We manage the form through comms as well.
Like on what kind of platforms?
All of our platforms. So we have
all of the above.
We have 3 Facebook accounts, 1 Instagram, Nextdoor, Blue Sky, City News.
Okay.
Ready Notify, which we wouldn't use, and the Mac. We use the Mac for that sort of stuff too. But we could certainly, and then once something is in our social media cycle, if it doesn't expire, we tend to recycle, put it back into the cycle at some point. So if we wanted to relaunch a campaign or an educational campaign, I would be happy to work with Deanna and Director Klingscale and push out some more communications.
And I did see, I don't know if we have to do something proactively. I just saw in the information that was included in the packet that an impact report is possible. So can we ask the administration to have, I think Deanna probably make sure that we get an impact report like in September, I think, or October. So
I would like it mid-year. If we can.
We do have that spring report in the packet.
No, I meant because there was something in there that says you can request an impact report. So I just want to make sure we have one prior to budget.
Sure, we can absolutely do that. So the information in the packet shares that there are between the 2 sites that are being sponsored, 600 households enrolled. And between those 2 sites, they've collected almost 34,000 pounds of material. So the pilot is about to conclude, and going forward, we're going to take over the 2 other sites that are in Cleveland Heights, the one that's at Church of the Savior and the other that's at Coventry. And covering all 4 of those sites, we'll still be within the budget that was allocated by council for this year. I think that we would be like $20,000 under the $100,000 that was budgeted.
When will you roll out the access for those other 2 locations for residents?
I think that the pilot ends this month. So our intention is to, I think that the pilot ends on the 17th, if I remember correctly. And then the legislation, it ends on the 17th. The second reading and vote would be on the 18th. We talked with Rust Belt Riders. They're okay with that short delay. So maybe there's a little bit of, education that we'd have to do to let people know that going forward, there's no additional cost for the service, but it would almost immediately begin.
I think word will spread very quickly, because that's a very positive thing to happen, so thank you.
So in addition to the 600 households that are at the Noble Library and the Dave Severance site, there are 230 at the other two locations that will now be folded into this program. So a total of 830 active users. My question is there an upper limit to number of households that can sign up with this budget, or when do we run out of capacity?
Yeah, so that was one of the things that we're trying to get into a contract for next year, so that there's a not to exceed amount, so that there's less uncertainty there for us. But we are still $20,000 below budget, and so if it were to be dramatically more popular than we're expecting, there's a bit of a cushion there. But for next year, to reduce that uncertainty.
And would they charge incremental use? So if, say, 1,000 people sign up and the use is more than expected, then the current cost to the city would be absorbed from that $20,000, but it would increase.
My understanding is that it's really based on the number of times that they dump it. And so if it's the case that a bin is full, well, then people just can't put more in. And so they're not going to come and dump it any more frequently than they otherwise would. So it seems that there's, low risk here for us.
All right, thank you for that. We're going to go on to second readings. 81-2026, resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with American Builders and Applicators. This is the ARPA money going to Housing Rehabilitation Deferred Loan Program for exterior repair. So we did talk about this already. Is there anything additional that people would like to? I'm really glad this is going well. Planning department, we're going to, are we looking at June 1st for the ARPA update? Okay, good. And again, could you remember to disaggregate some information on Noble so that we have that? Thank you. If there's nothing on that, we'll go to 82-2026, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a lease agreement with Max Bookstore. That's hard to say. So they're moving across the street next to the parking garage in the old City Buddha. We asked several questions last time, but if anything else came to mind, I'd kind of forever hold your peace. Well, you know what? You don't have to forever hold your peace, because when we get out there, you can speak again. All right. 83-2026, that's the Music Hop, $7,500. And 84 is the Tiger 5K, $2,500. All right. In that case, we shall move along on the agenda. So council workshop recap. Let's see what I got here. All right, so I'm just going to go through this to make sure that we all kind of yeah, that's where we're at. So council recently got together for 7.5 hours to share our vision, goals, and ideas on how to move our city forward. We set out to create a shared understanding of how our government works, and specifically how city council is supposed to work. And we discussed our role as a council person, our roles, our understanding of the mayor's agenda, our individual legislative initiatives. And we also spent time prioritizing our agenda, and then eventually talking about council rules and practices and so forth. So we did make some decisions. We decided we will now meet in committee of the whole on the second and fourth Mondays with at least 3 committee committees within that committee of the whole, introducing ideas. And the idea was to combine the process of introducing ideas, deliberation, and making motions to move legislation forward into one meeting with all council members present. Committee chairs will still be responsible for their committee agendas and running their part of the committee of the whole agenda. We said we'd try this for a couple of months and revisit it at the end of June. Does that sound right to everybody?
One question for you,
Yeah.
logistics. So if we're all going to be at the committee meetings and we're asked to move legislation forward out of committee, how many council people need to vote to move it out of committee?
Well, we're not voting,
Or how
because
many
we-
people need to
because we got
nod
the
their
law.
heads?
Yeah, we're motioning to move it forward. I think you want to have 4 so that, and by the way, that is not a commitment to vote yes, but it is a commitment to move it into the law department.
Okay.
Which is what the law director wants more than anything.
Thank you.
But I think that's the right answer, because I think it's still a committee of the whole meeting, so it's 7 or however many people are there, that's more than 4, or 4 or more. With some organization by topic, according to the committees.
So the idea is we want to avoid, having the law department work on things that a majority of council is already ruled out they wouldn't support. And, maybe saying it the nicer way that, we want to use the law department's time wisely. Yes.
One small correction, I think at the last, when we had the additional conversation, we talked about doing this through September.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Give it a little bit more time.
Yeah. I think that might have come from the law department.
And it sounds like a good idea.
That does sound like a great idea.
Thank you for that. So correction on the June, that we'll revisit that in September. So we also assigned tasks to various members. We decided to allow council members to hold neighborhood public meetings using city resources with some restrictions. I'm working on that. Councilwoman Cohen is working on a more detailed process of how council initiated legislation moves through council and the administration. Kind of like a Schoolhouse Rock thing, right? Probably a little more sophisticated. I mean, you don't go to Harvard to do cartoons. Right? Councilman Cobb is committed to finishing the revisions, not personally, but the revisions to section 111 of our codified ordinances, which are basically council rules, in his administrative services committee. Vice President Larson said she would draft rules governing civility. Well, actually, you didn't say you would do it, you did it. Rules on
I
civility.
sent you a draft
You
to
sure
see
did.
if it's ready to go on to everybody else.
You sure did. And also, being the multitasker you are, council vacancy and application process.
Starting on that now that I got the council rules out of it.
Right. We also assigned 2 legislative initiatives to the respective authors of those initiatives. And we also had a detailed discussion. So is there anything, I'm sorry, before I go any further, is there anything, other decisions that anybody remembers we made? Yes.
We talked about trying to smash some of the committees together, the lay committees with the public committees. I've had a chat with the mayor. I'm having a chat with the city administrator tomorrow about that, just to see logistically how that may look like, what it might look like. And I think we were gonna get back together once we talk to them about
You
this
were gonna
body.
take that on.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that reminder.
Councilman could go first.
Didn't see your hands.
So we had discussed a public engagement task force and starting that conversation. So
Yeah, so
Councilor Cohen and I are going to be working on that.
Right, and we are meeting with the administration this Friday to kick that off.
So, Mr. President, my point was only going to be in saying we decided, my recollection is that council wasn't voting on these things in that work session, but was there's discussion, and as things come forward out of that discussion, reflecting what everybody just said, that require council action, you'll take that action in a meeting.
Very good, thank you for that clarification, yeah.
We did make that list of legislation requests.
We did.
Talk about that. And my only question about that is, we do have, after each one of those requests, which department or departments would be involved.
Right.
So I've started looking at that to help me with my agendas and have a couple of items on my current agenda. Would the expectation be that by year end, a specific committee should have taken up that particular issue, or how would you like to see that?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking, it was my understanding, we were talking about what we were doing this year.
Okay.
You know, like, I mean, I didn't really want to get into like, well, what month, although if you look at the last item on the agenda for this committee of the whole, I am going to ask you in a few minutes about anything you're trying, you have, I think we need to let everybody know, including staff, about anything we're gonna do before the break in it's really the beginning of July, because we meet in the first week in July, and then theoretically we're off until mid-August. So thank you for that, and keep that in mind. Another thing that just popped into my mind, Vice President Larson, this was something we did last year where, as we thought of like budget items, we sent them to Addie so that we had a running list of budget items, things we'd like to see in the budget. So instead of us all kind of like trying to remember what we've thought of throughout the year, or what will be the whole year, but that we had, so you're not copying anybody on that, but send them to Addie. I would suggest that's a good idea, because that way, one, we're not springing a bunch of stuff on the administration at the last minute, and two, if you don't write it down, it might get lost. That's always a possibility.
Also, if you could include an actual figure in that, because there's a lot of times where I would get that someone would be like, oh, this is a great idea, but then I would have no idea what number was associated with that. Obviously, it doesn't have to be exact, but a rough estimate would be.
The discussion we had about council rules, procedures, and practices, I think really helped us get on the same page in how we function as a cohesive branch of government. And then, one of the things I made a note of is, we had all these, like, here are the formal roles we play. This is something we didn't do 4 years ago that I'm really glad we're doing now. There are formal rules and informal roles. It is one thing to look at them on a piece of paper, and it is another thing to apply them. And I think the discussion we had about charter amendments was very instructive, in the sense that it took those things that we wrote out, and when you apply it to like charter amendments, you have to look at our oath of office, you have to look at section 111 of our codified ordinances, and you have to look at precedent. Last year, and there were 3 of you who were not on council, but last year, when we went through the charter amendments, the recommendations from the Charter Review Commission, we reviewed them. Some of them we decided not to include because they weren't in the best interest of Cleveland Heights. The law director reminded me that we modified maybe most of the recommendations to make them better align with what was in the best interest of Cleveland Heights. There were some things that we put in there that were not recommended, that we, the sitting council at that time, thought were in the best interest of Cleveland Heights. So I think it's always good to take those kind of written little phrases like checks and balances and oversight and so forth, and apply them to something that we actually do. So anything anybody would like to add or just remark on as far as the 7.5 hour workshop? Yes.
We asked to have an open meetings at 101.
Yes.
Please.
And
Prefer Mr. Funk.
yes,
Possible if he's
did we ask you to ask him?
I've talked with him.
Okay.
He's willing.
And, okay, so, do you wanna do that through me or you know what, actually better through Addie, because she's gonna end up scheduling it, you know?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have a particular like time frame in mind?
No more than an hour and a half.
No, I mean like in terms of like, do you want it this month, next month, July, before you go on recess?
Earliest.
Okay, understood.
Coal lines with council calendars, because the longer we wait, the more difficult it becomes to. The other question I had brought up is asking that how do we engage the Civil Service Commission to review salaries for the mayor and council?
Yes, so I'll ask them, because I'm civil service secretary now, so I can ask them.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, you got promoted.
well, got more jobs. It's fine.
Alright, so
I'll ask them about it.
thank you.
You know, and I just, and without being maudlin about it, really thank everybody. I mean, it was a wonderful process, and I really was grateful to hear everything that is on all of our collective minds. And I think we have a better understanding of where we're coming from and where we're going. CIC update. I have a recollection that we did talk about this, but
We talked about it in the planning and development committee meeting.
yeah, do you want to just? Sure. Thanks.
The Community Improvement Corporation was established under the last administration as a body a nonprofit entity to dispose of, and by dispose I mean productively dispose of empty lots that the city owns. There was a lot of time and effort by the planning department with Director Zampt, who serves as the interim executive director of that body, and legal, putting together the structure of that organization, and $300,000 of ARPA funding was directed towards the establishment of that entity. After a few meetings under the new administration, technically Mayor Petrus chairs that body, we had a discussion that given the limited amount of infill property lots that we have to work with, which is about 140, the administration has already shown that that's something, number of lots that can be handled internally without a separate body. There were some concerns raised about just lack of awareness in the community about what the CIC does and what it's there for, and also the ongoing costs of maintaining its sustainability once the ARPA funds had run out. And as a result of that conversation over the last couple of meetings, in lieu of using those limited funds to hire a consultant and potentially an executive director, it was the mayor's suggestion and consensus of the group that we would move these functions back to the administration and keep the CIC as an entity, but essentially a dormant one until we might need it sometime in the future. It will be very, very low cost in terms of administrative costs or any operational costs to keep it dormant. I think there's a filing of one very limited form. And then we can, what we're waiting on from the law department and finance, I believe, is how we might what is allowed to do with the $300,000. And so we're waiting on that, at which point the CIC will meet again and just discuss next steps.
And we'll probably need to redo the agency agreement to make it reflect this advisory role, but you know, that shouldn't be too difficult.
Did I miss anything? There's a lot of people in the room who are all at the same meetings with me,
Yeah,
so.
that's true.
Okay, I'm getting
I think you got it
nods.
covered.
Okay, great.
The next item is council's work before summer recess. You know, we don't need to restrict this to 5 minutes. I mean, we can 10 or so, but you know, like for instance, the things that I wanted to do, they're budget things, so they don't have to be done before, but let's go around the room. Anything you want to get done before summer recess, our summer recess?
I'm taking it one step at a time. So
Okay.
as things evolve and get to the point where they're ready to be vetted or whatever, I don't have any timeline. Oh, I'm looking at year end, so.
Okay. Councilman Cobb?
What she said.
Okay.
Well, 111 we could probably get done
Yes.
before summer recess.
You could probably
Thanks
get
to
that
your
done.
editing skills.
Yes, that now that we're putting it in electronic form, yes, this is
So,
very important.
That's the only thing. Hopefully we'll have a good draft that we can vote on when we come back in August. After the law department vets it during our break, because I know our law director has used up all of his vacation
I
time
get
for
bored
the
during
year.
the breaks. Yeah.
Want to make sure you have something, while we're gone.
Evidently, we make a lot of work for staff, I guess.
There was a couple things that we talked about in our committees, but I really want to work with the administration before commenting on those. I would like to suggest, though, that if we're thinking about putting ranked choice voting on the ballot, we have a conversation about it. There was a memo that we received from the law director that I would very much like to talk to the law director, us as a body about.
Well, with all your permission, I'd like to put that on the 18th, May 18th agenda. Let's see where we're at, because we owe the group that's sponsoring this, we're kind of like a update on where we're at. Yeah.
What will we be putting on the agenda? Just the discussion? Or?
Yeah. Well, so in other words, take the temperature. Where are we all at on this?
Okay.
Are we moving anything forward? If we're not moving it forward, we need to, whatever it is we are not going to do, we should let them know.
It would be nice if there's anything additional that's coming from law that we get that in advance.
There will be. Yep.
Okay, I figured.
He's actually saying now, if you get that done in the next couple days, do you email that to us, or is that something that we just
We'll provide it to council. Yeah.
via email, or is this?
Most likely. Yeah,
Okay.
I would think so.
No, I mean as opposed to like the meeting on the 18th.
Yeah, no, I think in advance of the meeting,
Okay.
yeah, would be more productive.
Do you mean in advance of the packet for the 18th? Is that what you were?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
I think it would also be helpful to have it in advance of the packet.
So no new initiated legislation. I would like to see us make progress on several planning and development related issues that have been bouncing around. So I know we have a hearing, town hall, public meeting on ADUs coming up. That's early June, so potential to move legislation related to that prior to the July break. I believe Blanche Avenue project could potentially be fit in prior to then.
I mean, that's the administration, but.
That's,
Okay.
we're waiting for the administration to tell us when we're ready.
And then we have some work on the comprehensive zoning code review. So I believe we'll be getting some updates shortly. I don't know that there will be any action for council to do in that time frame, but at least making progress on getting feedback from the consultants and then laying out next steps and timelines. So in terms of work, that's what I'm looking at, but not newly initiated legislation.
Councilman Posh, anything on the Deer situation before the break?
Well, I've met with the mayor, and one of the things we were waiting for is a response back from the administration if we had a thumbs up or thumbs down, and I think we'll be following up and discussing that. I think there's general interest, but
Yeah, I expressed an interest in having another public hearing. I know that we had one, it was maybe a year and a half ago. Excellent attendance, very good feedback, but people's memories are short, so I think that it would be worthwhile to have another before proceeding with something.
Well, it would be good if that was in a sequence of things that we're going to follow, so that we, don't have a hearing in a year and a half in between the next action.
well, the issue though is I think there needs to be an administrative tie-in at some point, and there needs to be bringing the ODNR in just so they can help come up with a plan. I think once we have a plan, then we can do a public hearing, because I think there's still some.
Got it.
There's still some. If we had a public hearing now, we can't say we're doing X because we don't know what X is yet. So.
Councilman Stone?
So at our retreat, a number of council members brought forward the regulation of short-term rentals as one of the legislative priorities. I've been working with Law Director Hannah and Director Zamp on the revision and updating of the existing proposed statute or ordinance. It's my hope that we will have that ordinance in shape before the break for this council or this committee to recommend it for reading following the return from break. At our next meeting on May 11th, Chief Britton is going to be available to you to ask questions about law enforcement relating to short-term rentals. And as a next step after our conversation, we'll be bringing a series of policy questions to council before you see the legislation, just so that when you finally get the legislation in your hands, it's in a tight enough shape for you to take action on. I think that in the fall, it would be my hope that in addition to the readings, that we would have some public forum to allow people to ask questions about it. I think it also dovetails nicely with the ADU legislation, because there were comments from residents about that and the potential use of ADUs in the rental sphere. So I think all of these things come together. One of the reasons for this timing is that if we do enact this legislation, the first round of registrations would be, the registration deadline would be the end of the year. So there's a nice cadence for this to be enacted, say in October, and then there's a 90-day period for the registration to occur. So we would have the first go round of this. There's still a lot of questions to be discussed. I'm going to be meeting with Director Brzezinski about the taxation question. So that's my main priority. At our next meeting, also Director Zamp is going to be talking about the RFP for the housing code study. So that will be moving forward at the same time, and we'll find whether there will be issues that need to come before council as a result of that.
Okay. So we're working very hard to have the Landmark Commission ordinance update done, hopefully well before summer recess. It's with the law department right now. We have it on the agenda, I believe, for May 11th to discuss, and then continue to move that. The ADUs, I am hopeful. We did finally schedule the Planning and Development Committee meeting, so June 2nd at 5:30, and we'll announce it in council also. I think it'll be up to the planning department whether that's something, and the law department, whether that's something we can run before summer recess, or we'll have to discuss and then run after summer recess. The other piece of legislation that I had started, and I don't want to forget about, is the Planning Commission authority as it relates to parks.
Yes.
And that is with the planning department. What we had decided on a few months ago was that we'd go back on a few different drafts internally. I'm waiting on some feedback from the planning department. They have nothing else to do, so we should get it at some point. And then in which case, Director Gonzalez, I wanted to talk with him and perhaps some other department heads about what practical impact that change in authority would have. And then it would go to the law department to start the same conversation that we're having now about landmarks, and we're going to have about housing. So I think we probably won't get to that, but I'm hoping we could at least have an initial conversation before we go out on summer recess. And then just to mention on the couple things, the zoning code update will not happen before. But we perhaps have a hearing before summer recess. No, okay, I'm getting that now. We talked about that.
Maybe a workshop.
A workshop, okay, workshop, some sort of public, a workshop with us, with the council. The council workshop will happen before summer recess, but that'll happen after. And we are going to start the conversation on the GROW program. I did have a thank you, City Administrator Reese, for following up on that. We're gonna hopefully have an update on that in Committee of the Whole this month, but the work, any changes we'll want to make to that program will not happen until after summer recess. And then just following up on what Councilman DeWitt Foy said about the Community Engagement Task Force, we're meeting with the administration this Friday. Depending on that conversation, it might be something that we move forward soon, but that's going to depend on really our conversation this week, and I'll have more updates as we move forward. And then just one thing that's not in my committee that I would hope happens before summer recess, but I think we're still working on trackless leaf floaters, if that's an option for
Haven't heard more.
Haven't heard, I know, we're still working on it, but I'm hoping that we can think more about leaf pickup before summer recess.
Add it to the growing list.
I know. It's been on I'm grateful that it's been on the list. We're waiting for the demo.
I wanna make sure that everybody's aware that the complaint and green streets legislation is still moving forward. City Administrator Reese and the Transportation Mobility Committee have been working really hard to make sure that that's ready to go back to law for, I don't know, the umpteenth time. And so I'm hoping that that's something that we could possibly get done by recess. If not, at least by year end, but they've been working on it a long time, so I'd like to see it happen.
Well, thank you. All right, roll call.
Real quickly, can I just, because we were talking about kind of what we're doing before break, for next Monday's committee of the whole, our new, way that we have this going. I have municipal services. I've got 3 items on your agenda: bulk refuse pickup, sidewalk repair, and then your committee's priorities for 2026. And then I have housing and building committee for discussion of RFP for building code studies and the short-term rental law enforcement issues and legislation policy questions. Then I've got planning and development for the landmark commission legislation. And I don't think you had anything else for this one? Okay. And then community relations and recreation to discuss the youth advisory council and the structural changes to committees.
We're doing 4?
Yes, because we're fitting in the landmark, that's only one,
Are they all an hour?
about. But yours less.
No,
I was just going to say, we're gonna be shortening our agenda so that the policy questions, I would like to reserve time on the 26th for a more substantive piece of the meeting to have that discussion. We just had that. So really be Chief Britton coming to speak for us for a few minutes, and then Director Zamp's report will be our agenda items, so there'll be a little bit of time saved there.
if I could just suggest, like, as I think what we should be doing is requesting with time, like, that we need, and I've been thinking about that mostly because I'm gonna be the one that needs to get squished in to these meetings, but I think if we all, like, it may not be that we always have an hour, where, in fact, I think in the past, even on the Mondays, we've had a half an hour meeting, or we've had an hour and a half meeting, depending on the content. So I think is where, I mean, even if we wanna talk.
It would be very helpful to have at least an idea of time. If it happens to go over under, because it's one meeting and not multiple meetings with different start times,
There's
it's
more flow,
there's more
right.
flow. You don't have to wait for.
But I'm just thinking about the 26th, where I do have a few things that need to get put on the agenda. It would be good to know if somebody needs a shorter time, a longer time, and we can all, I mean, I think it's possible. I think it's very possible. We can all work together on it.
So chairs, everybody put a little number next to your meeting so Eddie knows.
Whatever.
Yeah, for the 26th, I had finance, public safety, admin, and planning.
How much time do you need?
Yeah, can we talk about it quickly?
Sure.
For the RFP on the 11th.
4 or 5 minutes. 15 minutes, sorry.
Okay. So probably just a half an hour on the 11th for us, and then probably 45 minutes on the 26th for the discussion of the policy issues. Do you think that would be sufficient?
That seems like plenty.
Okay. Maybe that.
Can I add something, Eddie? So for the health and safety and for the finance, I will not be at that meeting the third Monday. And we have Councilmember Larson, Council Member DeWitt Foy that'll be sharing those. And I've been working, trying to get some draft agendas to them, and which I should have in the next couple of days. So they can take it from there.
Do you think we're gonna need an hour for each?
I don't think so.
Because if that.
Because you said on the 26th, you only had 15 minutes.
No, 26th, I probably have 35 to 40.
I'm certain they'll be short.
Okay, what I've been working on for planning and development for the 26th is brief updates from the developers that are working on infill housing. So that's YRM, Start Right, and Future Heights, as well as an update from the city on the GROW program. So I would say 30 minimum, and we might have it, yeah, okay.
And then if you will get back to me when you have your agenda, so that's, I don't know how long it's going to
Chapter 111, I think we're 3/4 through it.
Or
I
more,
think.
yes.
So I don't think I'll have any other business.
Okay, so I'll just put 30 minutes, and if we have more, we have more. Please will give us a rough idea.
That should all fit.
Should.
Do you need a motion during council meeting tonight to affirm what our recess dates are?
I was just talking to Jessica about this before. Yeah, we will need a motion, or we could do it by resolution. It's up to you guys.
I'd like to do it as a motion if that's okay.
During new business,
Yeah.
okay. And I'm looking at, Addie, look at the calendar for me. I was looking at July 13th through August 14th. If I need to adjust, be happy to make the motion, I just wanna make sure I get dates at work.
Did you guys still wanna have your first committee meeting in July, or no? Which would be the 13th.
I'd like to reserve the time if possible, because then we'll, in August, we're scheduled not to come back until after the second Monday.
So then let's say July 14th is the start of recess.
Okay.
And we'll cancel the July 20th and August 3rd meetings and come back.
Will we then have meetings on the August 24th and 31st? Usually
I would expect.
Yes,
Well, the 31st.
Is the
I
fifth
think
the
Monday.
fifth Monday, so we would, yeah.
We,
Okay.
that's,
I made a
Those are
plan.
Vacation
I made a
Monday.
plan around the fifth Monday, so that's why I needed to
That's when I
ask you.
plan my vacations, around that fifth Monday.
Okay,
we'll call the fifth Monday a blessing.
All right.
That's what
thank you.
And I know this is meetings, but I will not be on the August 17th meeting. I will be flying back from
I will not be here on the 24th.
And I would suggest to Councilman DeWitt-Foyce on the 13th of July, if we get into a situation where people are, want to have a family obligation or something, maybe we just have the committee meet if you can get if we couldn't get a quorum. My point is, if we couldn't get a quorum of 4 for a committee of the whole meeting, I would not discourage anybody from having a committee meeting where you had at least 2 people. I mean, it's an option.
Yeah, I'd like to reserve the time because we're not scheduled to come back until after the second Monday in August. That would be 2 full months without meeting to discuss those topics. So
Right.
at this point, I would like to reserve the time. If we can give it back, I think that's fine.
But I'm saying it could happen one of 2 ways. That's what I'm
If there's
saying.
time on another Monday too, you could also jump in, like on the on Monday that you're.
With committee of the whole, we only need 4 people. So as long as we have any 4
That's
people,
true.
we can still
And
meet.
we can set up virtual meetings.
This is true.
Just let me know.
So we're looking at July 14th through August 14th.
Yep, with canceling the July 20th and August 3rd meetings. You
But
just
wait.
be specific about that. because that's
What's the date? Is it August?
What did you just say at the end?
To cancel the July 20th and August 3rd regular council meetings.
So that needs to be part of the
Yeah.
motion,
Sorry.
canceling. Again,
July 20th and August 3rd, regular council meetings.
thank you.
All right. So I'm gonna adjourn this.
Wait, hold on.
Oh, no, I'm
Just
not.
one more thing, guys. I'm not gonna actually go through it, but I just wanted to pass out. I put together a memo from my most recent April Northeast Ohio Municipal Clerks Association educational session. It was a really fantastic session, and I have plenty more documents. These are just really a summary of my notes. I would be happy to go over anything.
Oh, sorry, we didn't
totally
have
fine.
enough time for an oral report, but you know what, I didn't get one. And now adjourn this meeting at 7:29.